probably should kick off. Everybody, thank you for joining us tonight, and thanks to an introduction to Chris. Chris, thank you for joining us for the meeting, and we look forward to your talk, and I'll introduce you in a minute. I think we're going to kick off with some words of wisdom from Lynn. And so, no pressure, Lynn. We got the big guy in the house here, so you better make it good.
Well, I'm not nervous at all. Oh, okay. So I am really nervous, but I'm going to try my best.
You'll be
This
great.
is something I wanted to tell you guys many weeks ago, and I had thought that when we got to the kind of happy, sad thoughts, that I would tell you that about what I'm going to say, because somehow for me the happy, sad thoughts are kind of about trust, that we're kind of sharing our joys and sorrow with each other, you know, our ups and downs, and it's kind of a show of heart on all of our parts to share those things. But I'll get back to that in a minute. I think what I want to tell you about is I was late for joining one of these Zoom Rotary meetings, and I was late because I got called by a fellow who lives in Holland. Amsterdam. Netherlands? It's not Holland. And he had been a former customer of ours that through the internet was buying rocks from Richard and asking for advice on how to cut fire agate, and kind of years and years and years of buying. And somehow he figured out how to find our phone number on the internet. I don't know how he did it, and started calling us. And his phone calls kind of happened at our dinner time or when we're getting ready to cook it or something like that, which in this household's kind of all over the map. That can go from about 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night when we're dealing with it. He's the fellow Bon that was calling us so many times for New Year's Eve that he'd gotten drunk, I guess, and decided to call us, and we'd had Ann and Bon and Wendy and Di over for supper. And he called every 10 minutes and just kind of, we were polite. We tried our best to explain him we had company and we just really couldn't do this, and wished him all the best and that kind of thing. And we'd ignored several phone calls, several of the ringings, trying to just cue him. This wasn't appropriate timing, but it didn't quite work. Anyway, he got mad at us at some point in buying that he didn't like one set of rocks that Richard had shipped over, but he'd started cutting on them, and kind of the behind the scenes operating procedure of if you've bought rocks from someone and you've started to cut them, they're yours. So he didn't like what he got, but he really liked the bonus freebies that Richard had put in this, and got quite hostile on the phone with us, and then started and Richard's like, send them back. Well, he didn't want to because he liked the free ones. So he started posting up on Facebook, on our business site, really bad things about Richard, and we blocked him. So we didn't talk to him for a couple of years. And somehow in this with the COVID stuff, he started calling again on the pretext that he wanted to sell some of those stones and was kind of asking Richard advice on how to do it. So Richard kind of fielded the phone calls for the last couple of months, and just before that Rotary meeting, I picked up. And this is where I'm going with this story. He basically told me that he'd spent $4,000 on groceries to have delivered to his house for him and his dog. He was all by himself. His dad had died 5-6 years ago. His mom had passed away about 3 years ago. The ex-wife had passed away. I didn't know about her. And a neighbor, I don't know if that's the next door neighbor or the next apartment neighbor, had passed away, and he had no one. And I was just devastated to know that you could be that alone, that you're calling strangers on the other side of the world to just have somebody to talk to. And when it came time for the happy, sad thought, I had wanted to share this, and all I could get out is how much I valued being part of Rotary, and how valued I felt being part of it, how welcoming Rotary is, how supportive and like-minded and kind and, I don't know, affirming. I guess I said welcoming, but it was just kind of, that's all I could get out at the happy thought, was just how much I appreciated and valued being part of Rotary. And I guess where I'm going with this is, I know that we're hoping that we're kind of getting out of this COVID kind of situation, but there are so many lonely people in this world who really have no one, that I just kind of wanted to remind us all that it is really important to share time and listen and talk to people you haven't talked to for a long time, maybe on the phone, but maybe as Rotary, it's like just how much this small group of people are so very important, because it's kind of our support group, and that's where I'm going. And that's it.
Very nice, Lynn. Very nice.
When he calls now, it's basically, I know you're really old, but I just want to make sure you're okay, and this is what you have to do to stay safe. And he's given us directions for cleaning off our shoes when we come out of the house, all the rest of it. So
Okay.
anyway, it's just like, yeah, I talked with Richard afterwards and said, you know, we have to just listen. This is somebody who's so lonely. We just have to listen. Middle of dinner, doesn't matter. Anyway, thank you guys for being part of the group that I get to belong to.
We love having you here. Thank you, and thanks for your moment of inspiration.
Okay.
And it really is a moment of inspiration. I think that you shouldn't have been nervous at all. That was wonderful and heartfelt. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move on, and I'd like to introduce to everybody Mr. Chris Offer, who just told us, for some of the guys who came on a little bit late, was at our founding. I don't know, Born, do you remember, Chris? He came and visited us at the founding event.
Vaughn and I know each other from West, from when he was West Van.
Yeah.
From a previous Rotary Club. So yeah, we go back a year or two.
Oh, that's great. So Chris is, if you didn't get a chance to have a look, he's got a massive history with Rotary. Tonight he's going to be talking to us about Rotary, the major gifts and initiatives for the Peace Fellowships and the Rotary Peace Centres around the world. He's been involved in the Rotary for, Chris, 30 years, is that right?
About that, yeah.
Yeah. He's been all over the world with Rotary. He's given advice on committees. He's run committees. He's been the district governor. It's a long and impressive list. And he's also been, he's retired after 30 odd years in the police force. And I almost caught you up tonight, Chris, because my wife teaches criminology at Simon Fraser, and I wanted to find out what this sort of bloke was like as a student at Simon Fraser, but she told me that you beat her by a few years. So, when did you do criminology, Chris? I'll tell her.
I graduated Simon Fraser in 78, 79, I think.
Okay. All right.
On the wall. Hold on. I can tell you. I can't read the date of the.
Who was your main professor? Anyone who stood out to you?
Simon Burden Jones was there. The fellow's doing the Surrey Police report.
Rob Gordon?
No, Griffiths.
Griffiths?
Was one of mine.
Well, my wife just yelled out at me that Griffiths is still in the department. So
Yeah,
There
he's
you go.
doing, he wrote, in fact, he was quoted in I think the Vancouver Sun this week on the transition to a municipal police force in Surrey. He countered a letter from German, from the former RCMP person to
Okay.
counter disputes on what it means.
Okay. There you go. It's a small world after all.
Yeah.
So, look, Chris, I'll let you kick off.
Okay, thank you.
We're looking forward to hearing what you have to say, and thank you for being here with us tonight.
Good. Let me see if this works. There we go. Thanks very much. It's good to be back with your club, even if it's virtual. And before we started, we were talking about Bowen Island, and my memories of Bowen Island go back till when I was probably 12 or 14, somewhere in that age group, when I was a Vancouver Sun newspaper boy, and when there was a camp that if you sold enough subscriptions, I think it was $2 a month for the newspaper, and if you sold enough subscriptions, over the year you got to go to Bowen Island to Camp Gates. So my memories of Bowen Island go back a long ways. But I really want to talk about Rotary's peace initiatives tonight. A little bit of history on what Rotary, where our peace programs come from, a bit about the Rotary Peace Centers, and our partnership with the Institute for Economics and Peace. But mostly what I want to talk about is what your Rotary Club, each of you as Rotarians, and your Rotary Club could do. But Rotary's history of peace involvement goes back not to our very beginning, but pretty close to that. 1921, the International Convention in Edinburgh, Scotland. A Canadian Rotarian, actually, Donald McRae from Halifax, proposed the fourth object of Rotary. And that today seems quite straightforward, peace and world understanding, but it was quite radical then. Rotary up to 1921 was very local. You didn't do anything outside of your little community or big community if you're in Chicago or San Francisco, Vancouver. The Rotary Club, the first the Vancouver Rotary Club goes back to 1913. So there was Rotary in Vancouver in that year. So this movement to international was quite a contentious issue, and it did pass and set the standard. Middle of World War II, Rotary clubs are involved in the forming of UNESCO that we know now for the World Heritage Site, but was more focused on education at that time. 1949, quite a few Rotarians involved in signing in San Francisco, the UN Charter. Canadian Rotarian Lester B. Pearson from the Ottawa Rotary Club. He's mostly known as a Rotarian. He went on to do some other things, I think. Win a Nobel Peace Prize and become Prime Minister. At that time, he was the Canadian ambassador or Consul General to the United States. 1999, more modern history. The Rotary Peace Centers, and I'll talk more about those, were approved and formed 2004 for the first graduates. 1917, and really in 2017, an important partnership with the Institute for Economics and Peace, a strategic partnership with that organization, and I'll talk more about that. And this year, newest Rotary Peace Center in Uganda, Makerere University in Uganda in Kampala, was formed. The first class will start there in 2021. So interesting history, and that's just a brief. There's lots of gaps I've left there that need filling in, but lots of things. One way, I think, interesting way to look at Rotary's history is through the Rotarian magazine, and it wasn't published in the first few years, but there's well over 110 years of magazines. And what Rotary did was get an agreement with Google, and every issue of the Rotarian magazine is being digitized, and every month when it's published, it's digitized and added to Google Books. Anybody in the world can go on and search this huge database of the Rotary magazine, Rotarian magazine. And I picked just three covers there. The first one, 1917, Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, and his 14 points on peace, advocating that came out of World War II. Ironically, of course, one of that, the United States themselves wouldn't support Wilson in his 14 peace points. The 1938 cover of the Rotarian, somebody looking out on the graves of World War I and hoping that it would never happen again. And of course, we know less than a year later, we were back at a tragic war. And in the start of the Cold War, a picture of a Russian sailor on the cover of the Rotarian magazine trying to understand Russia, and we're probably still working on that today. So a really kind of an interest in history. And you know, incredible number of people have written for the Rotarian magazine over the years. 1936, Winston Churchill wrote an article on leadership. 1950s, J. Edgar Hoover wrote one on juvenile delinquency. And many people have written for the Rotarian magazine in our history, but brings us really to more modern history and our partnership with the Institute for Economics and Peace. And it's an Australian think tank that does research on peace and terrorism. And they publish annual reports, and their 2020 report actually came out just last week, and I'll quote from it briefly in a minute. But they didn't invent these concepts, but they certainly develop, particularly the positive peace, and put more structure to it. Negative peace is the absence of violence. The conflict's over, people have stopped shooting at each other, or whatever violence has occurred, but the causes of the violence still exist. We haven't done anything to prevent the future. We got the ceasefire agreement. The positive peace is far more. It's attitudes, institutes, and structures about positive peace. It's trying to get to the root causes of it and lay a foundation. You know, Rotaries in our history, we really been aspirational. We've talked about the need for peace, that we're for peace, and courage in other people. But in many cases, we haven't been the real pushers taken on. I think that's changing, that Rotary is doing far more projects. Now, this is sort of looking at those, the positive peace. What the Institute for Economics and Peace came up with was 8 pillars. They found research, and they can document this, and read in their report, you'll see the data. And they're interconnected. These 8 pillars of positive peace are connected. Low levels of corruption, equitable, not equal, equitable distribution of resources, free flow of information, the media, good neighbor relations with your neighbors, and more higher on these 8 pillars, more peaceful the country. You know, and you've got to be careful how you interpret some of these. I always think of corruption. I think your Rotary Club has been involved with the World Health Network that ships containers of used hospital equipment out of a warehouse in Coquitlam. It's a multi-club project. My club was involved in shipping one of these to a country, and there was some difficulty getting it through the border. And several of us went there to help distribute the goods, to get really hands-on involved. And the Rotarians had smoothed the way through customs and got the container delivered. And I made the comment, did you have to bribe the officials to get it through? And they were quite offended. They're very offended by that, because bribery is illegal, it's bad. But they did give the customs person a gift. They saw a difference. It wasn't bribery to give a hardworking government official a gift and move the Rotary file for getting the container released from the docks, from the bottom of the pile to the top. And sometimes we got to think about different cultures, look at things in a different way. We have a clear giving government official money or a gift to do something they're paid for, we consider that bad. Other countries, not so much. So these have to be balanced in different cultures and different ideas. But positive peace, very quickly, here's Rotary's 6 areas of focus balanced with those areas of focus. And they don't correlate exactly, but they are a system too. For instance, if a Rotary Club does a water project in Kenya, that affects all of this. The water project means children don't get dysentery, don't get diarrhea, the children go to school and are educated. We know that if girls and women are educated, they control the size of their families. Smaller families, less poverty. If the children go to school, they're educated, they work, they get a job, health increases, the economic development, all this increases. So it's they're interconnected, and that's really important. The rest we can intuitive, a peaceful country is better income, better environmental outcomes, better standards in a peaceful country than a country is not going to focus on environmental issues if they can't feed their people. So good outcomes for peaceful countries. This is what the world map. This is from the report from the Institute for Economics and Peace last week. And dark green, more peaceful countries, red, less peaceful countries. And you can see our neighbors. Now, this does not take into effect the current situation of the Black Lives Matter. That's recent. That will be reflected in the conflicts there will be reflected in next year's report. But we do quite well. Interestingly, Europe is one of the most peaceful regions of the world right now. And you think about that, 2 world wars, the Bosnian War, the Canadian Air Force was bombing there not too many years ago as part of a NATO force. And to have all of Europe, for France, a little bit less peaceful. The only one in red there is Turkey. A little bit of Turkey that's in Europe is in conflict. If you look at South America, Venezuela, of course, is teetering on collapse. Brazil has incredible difficulties, not in red yet, but very difficult. But even saying that, the Western Hemisphere, I believe it's 20 years, it's the first time in 20 years there's no hot wars. There's no civil war. Nobody's shooting at anybody in a war in Central America, South America right now, which is quite remarkable when we have in the South and Central America a history of civil conflicts. But Brazil, Venezuela, Nicaragua, there's some issues there that won't are very difficult. So interesting map. Here's the sort of the Coles notes of the report. 81 countries up, 80 down, slight decline in peacefulness in the world in the last year. The Institute for Economics and Peace has 14 years of data. They've been doing these reports for 14 years. Monetarism, violence, military spending is some of the things they use to do their calculations. The 10 most peaceful countries, and we could probably name some of these. We would, if you were asked without ever seeing this report, you may not pick Singapore or Czech Republic, but some of these others, we can be pat ourselves on the back. Canada does well, but we shouldn't be complacent. You think of a situation. If a year ago I told you about a country that was had suspended parliament, suspended the local legislature, was ruling by emergency decree, had closed the borders down to the country, was directing how close people could walk together, you'd think I was talking about China or North Korea, not about Canada. So, we got to think about things. Singapore strikes me. I was in Singapore a few years ago and had a dinner with a Canadian friend who had been working there for 7 years, and I was lamenting how safe and what a wonderful country Singapore was. And he said, "I agree with you, but I wouldn't criticize the government on the telephone." That freedom in Singapore comes with a trade-off of a lot of personal freedom, loss of a lot of personal freedom. While I was there, a school bus driver had sold some drugs to a kid. He was tried, appealed, and executed in a matter of weeks for selling drugs to children. We may think that's justified, but it's really quite remarkable what they did. The 10 worst countries, once again, you could probably guess at most of them, what they're like. I was in South Sudan a few years ago, just before independence, just before the time when South Sudan got independence from Sudan. It's a dysfunctional country. It's really dysfunctional. We were doing a project with the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and Gates Foundation, assessing, really doing an audit of the polio campaign, not giving vaccine, but going back place to place. And the health system is a series of unconnected health clinics, church-run, run by other organizations, NGOs. And we were looking at not computer records, but ledgers, handwritten ledgers about potential cases of paralysis of children and vaccine records and things. So it's not surprising that they're on that this list. Which brings me to my real message tonight, and I really want to talk to you about what can you do, so what? And this is what brings down to Rotary. What you can do as an individual Rotarian and what you can do as a Rotary Club. A quick example of a few projects. I was in Cartagena, Colombia in November. Our District 5040 did a global grant, a Rotary Foundation global grant, with some other financial support from clubs in Utah, and the working with the Rotary clubs in Colombia. As you know, Colombia had years of conflict. The FARC guerrillas fought with the government, and it was hard to tell if the FARC guerrillas or the government people were worse. They finally got so tired of conflict that they signed a peace accord giving amnesty to the guerrillas, amnesty to the government people. And the Rotarians there in Colombia said, what can we do to build on that? So they did a series in 5 major cities in Colombia of peace projects, and they used Rotaractors. They wanted young people to be involved, so the Rotary clubs recruited the Rotaractors and YMCA members. Now the hand puppet there I thought was kind of neat. What this Rotaractor discovered, that in his city, the children had seen their parents disappeared. They had seen siblings disappear. They had seen violence, a lot of the children from indigenous communities, and they wouldn't talk about it. But they would talk to the hand puppet. They would come out and have a conversation with the hand puppet about their brother who had disappeared, about their mother that they had never seen again, and start the healing process by this conversation with a hand puppet about what happened. The guy in the with the funny wig on and was clowning around in the picture is actually a police officer from Bogota and a Rotaract member. One of his jobs in the police was just like in Canada, minor drug offenses or nonviolent crimes can be community service orders. Here, corrections do it, and in Colombia, the police do it. And rather than go to court or jail, they could opt to have a community order. And they usually put them in red jumpsuits and they went out and picked garbage up. He arranged for, rather than giving them an option, they could take a course offered by the Rotaract Club on positive peace. Now, some of them just did it to get out of picking garbage up. Some of them probably learned something from it. So it's just an interesting process to see the Rotaractors and the Rotary clubs get so involved in that. And if I don't know your Rotary background. If I'm talking about Rotaract, that's the younger Rotary group, 18 to 30 years of age. So excuse me if some of you aren't familiar with Rotaract, there are several Rotaract clubs in our district. As well, we did some training, there was some training. I don't speak Spanish, so I certainly wasn't doing the training. I don't know what they were doing in the lower picture. As I said, I don't speak Spanish, but they were sure the heck having fun jumping around with their hands up. The picture, this was in a hotel, and the picture in the training, the mural on the back wall, I thought was quite ironic for a session on peace. It's the Spanish invaders and the indigenous people kneeling down before the Spanish, and we know the outcome of that. Not just in Colombia, but Central America, and we know the outcome of the Europeans coming to the United States and Canada as well. So it's interesting to see that. So what can you do? Let me get, this is one thing I'd really ask every one of you to do. Consider taking the Rotary Peace Academy course, rotarypeaceacademy.org. This is an online course. It goes into these 8 pillars of positive peace, goes into it in much more detail. Take you about 4 hours. You can log on. You can take a half an hour now, come back tomorrow or next week. It's an interactive online course, free. So it's really quite interesting to do it. You'll learn a lot more than we can talk about in these few minutes on positive peace. Some of the other things you could do, we know during COVID, really all Rotary clubs should right now, I think, be thinking about post-COVID. What can you do after COVID? We know it's winding down, or the amount of cases in British Columbia, we're doing really well. We don't know if it will ever go away. But we can think post. Well, how can you help your community? What can you do in Bowen Island? We know there's been more domestic violence during COVID. Women are in their homes with their partner or their spouse. There's more alcohol consumption. There's more violence. Is there something you can do there? Support talking positive peace courses with government officials. What kind of training? Really, what could you do in your community? And the Rotary Peace Centers is the next one you really talk about. So there's things you can think about just to sow the seeds that what can we do post-COVID? The Rotary Peace Centers are university programs, have been around for about 15 years, about 1,300 alumni now to the program, working around the world, working with the United Nations, working with refugees, working for the World Bank, working for numerous NGOs, working locally. We're talking about Simon Fraser University. Julia Smith from Squamish went through this program. She's now in poli-sci, I think, she went back to Bradford, did a master's at Bradford, then went back and did her PhD, and is now teaching at SFU. So we have partnerships with 5 universities, Queensland in Australia, one in Tokyo, Japan, that's English-speaking university or English courses. Uppsala in Sweden, also English-speaking, Bradford in the UK, and Duke, UNC, University of North Carolina, and Chapel Hill, North Carolina, have a joint program. The Peace Scholars can go to either university there. They study there. We do some additional funding. We also have a certificate program. We've had a certificate program for 10 years, Chulalongkorn University in Thailand. And our newest one, as I said, is just been announced in Makerere University in Kampala. So these 2 certificate programs. So we have the master's degree and then the certificate. The certificate program is mid-career. NGOs, diplomats, police, somebody from the RCMP. There's several RCMP members from across Canada and municipal police members from various Afghan military, and it's a certificate, so it's a mid-career. The other one's a standard master's program focused on peace studies. This one's it has been a 3-month residential course starting in 2021, both the one in Chulalongkorn in Thailand and in Kampala are going to a 1-year staggered course. So they're going to do some online training. Then they go for a 10-week residential course. They bring an action plan, a project that they're actually going to implement, not just a theoretical one, but they're going to implement it. After their 10-week course, they go home, implement the course, stay online with their peers and their professors. And then they go back either to Thailand or Chulalongkorn or Kampala for a 1-week final course. So this is the certificate program. This is where you come in. You can nominate. It doesn't cost your club anything, either for the masters or this. I don't know if you ever nominated somebody. They don't have to be from Bowen Island. They don't have to live or work in Bowen Island. They can be from anywhere in the world. The masters is valued at about $75,000. Rotary pays their transportation, living allowance, tuition, books. The local Rotary Club supplies a counselor, a Rotary counselor, to help them find a place to live and whatever issues they come up with. And Rotary also funds a research project during their graduate studies, similar in the certificate program. So that's where you can come up. The applications have just finished for this year, so you've got a year to think about this and try to find somebody from the community. So that's a really quick overview of Rotary's peace programs, and as you can guess, we could go on for many hours. I have 4 asks, 3 of them I've made already. The first, I encourage you to take the Rotary Peace Academy course. That'll take you about 4 hours, staggered over time. I encourage your club to consider nominating somebody from local or anywhere in the world for the Peace Fellowship. It's competitive. Nominating doesn't get them in. I think our district interviewed 8 and they put 6 forward, and getting at the final. So there's about 1,200 applications for 50 masters. And so you can understand how competitive it would, but which means we're getting damn good candidates. Think about a local peace project. What could you do locally or internationally? And finally, your financial support. The Rotary Foundation, like all charities, all the foundations at this time of COVID need your financial support. Don't forget the Rotary Foundation. And it's a way to, one unique way or one good way to support the peace programs is in your wills or estates. Every night we're seeing death numbers on the news of COVID. All of us, I think about that, and think about your estate plans. It's something we think about privately, but not we don't often discuss. But we should all be reviewing our estate plans regularly, and I hope you'll do something in your estate plans for the Rotary Foundation, in particular peace initiatives. It's good estate planning to have money in a charity. It's something everybody should do in their wills and in estates anyhow, to offset taxes or probate fees. Anyhow, that's it. Thank you very much for inviting me to your island in the Pacific, even if it's virtual. And I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Chris, thank you. That was awesome. Yeah, everyone, we'll do the virtual clap. Thanks very much. We actually did put through an applicant. We sponsored a young woman, Beverly Rapley.
Oh, I've met her at the conference in Sun Peaks. Yes,
that's right. And we put her forward the year before, I think, or might have been within that year.
Yeah.
And she got through 2 or 3 rounds, but didn't get the gong in the end. But it was a positive experience for her, and she got a bit of a lift out of it, which was great to see. Yeah. Guys, does anyone have any questions for Chris going forward? Yep.
Hi, Chris. Is this the same people of Positive Peace that spoke at the Toronto conference?
Yes, they did, and they did an exercise. They do an exercise with the 8 pillars of ropes or strings. Yeah, they physically connect the which of the 8 pillars. They do a visual thing with it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I came back with that. I think I even talked about it at the club at one point. But the other thing, if I can say, is it was going to the Utah conference was my first, I guess, exposure. And the reason I went down, I had, I can't remember Erasmus, who's, the from the north, his brother Udo, and I went down for the peace conference portion of it. That's what drew us down, and that's what got me to become a Rotarian.
Good.
Yeah, it was really, I'm impressed with what's going on there.
Good stuff.
Other questions? Catherine? No? Anyone else? I was wondering about you talk about mid-career for the certificate program, the professional certificate. Is it mostly for people? I mean, are they looking? When you say mid-career, are you talking about people that are in the field already, as you said, police officers, etc.? Is there, can it be? Can anyone who shows interest, can they apply and have a fair crack at it, or do you really need to be in some sort of mid-career cycle that shows what you've been doing in that field?
For the certificate, really in the field. I mean, you could be, if you're changing, if you could really convince in your essays and in the process that you were going to, Rotary puts a lot of money into that. It's not a general certificate. Out of the many people that apply, a lot of them that don't get it are just that's flippant. That's just looking for a scholarship. That's not bad. Wanting to go to university and get a scholarship is not bad. But we really want to fund people that are going to be practitioners of peace, that are going to work in the field. So the certificate program, somebody that wasn't working in the field would have to convince, that, if you were in retail sales and had a passion for peace, but you were going to go back and working into retail sales,
sure,
yes, you'd be more knowledgeable, you'd be maybe a better volunteer in the community, but it's too expensive that if you're not working full time, don't plan. Now, some people don't do it, but you can't make, like all scholarships, you can't make people do it. And like all scholarships, like the ones, the US, Australia, US, England, getting them to go home is always is a challenge. You know, Canada, like the U.S., gives them nice visas, and our international students, a disproportionate number of them stay here and help Canada. We get a big brain drain from other countries, and some of our scholars, a lot of Peace Fellows are in the United States, working in the United States and in Canada, that never went back or went back, but then applied for a visa, and they're educated. In Canada, it's fairly easy to get a permanent resident status in Canada,
Sure.
a green card in the U.S. So, I mean, that's one of the downsides. You think all these people are going to go back to Kenya or Indonesia and work in the field there. And some are passionate about their countries, and they do. But some say, you want me to go where? I've been living in Sweden for a year, and you want me to go back to Nigeria?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that must be a real challenge.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So there's the online course that we can do.
Yeah.
So my question would be, does that apply like all the police officers in the States that are in so much trouble? Is there a way that, would it make a difference for them to be watching something like that? Like,
I think so. Somebody asked me, what can Rotary do? Well, the first thing we as Rotary is try to get. My club has a member of the Delta Police in our club, so we have a connection with the police. So the first thing I think we can often do is look for the local police. Now that's not always possible. That Rotary doesn't appeal to everybody, but trying to convince, and the mounted police, there's some advantage, because even if they're transferred, there's a Rotary club where they go. So trying to convince the mounted police or the local police, wherever they are, to be a member, doing projects with them, and certainly getting police officers. And there's a number in the United States have gone through the program. Australia and other countries is beneficial. A lot of them end up teaching. A member of the Vancouver Police, Brian Nikon, went to Bradford. He went there before he was in the police. He now teaches nonviolent tactics in the Vancouver Police, how to defuse situations, use other hand-to-hand methods to restrain people, without escalating to a club or a taser or a gun. So that's something Rotary can be proud of, that we've made a small contribution in that area to teaching indirectly nonviolent ways to defuse situations. Does it work? No, it doesn't always work. But people think about it first. It can help. So the answer to your question is yes. Are we going to solve the racial issues in Canada or in police departments in Canada or the United States with sending a few people there? No, but will we make a contribution? Absolutely.
I guess where I was thinking is there a way to make it not just that you're sending to take a full course, but is there a course or a way that it's more simplified that it would change some mindsets of having everybody having to look at it, sort of thing? Like, how is there a way to share it more? Like, not just those limited people that apply.
Well, we're doing that. That's part of what this partnership, and we're only a couple of years into it. Why one of the reasons indirectly that I'm talking to you tonight, why there's this Peace Academy course on, it's the belief if we teach ourselves first. There's also a group, and I'm one of those. The Rotary Foundation funded, and the plan, they're called Peace Activators. We went down into US and we did a 3-day course in this material, and to hope to do more projects like in Colombia. And there are projects, these are seeping out. So can we change the world? Yes, we can, a little bit at a time. We can't do it all ourselves, but yeah. So yeah, this is creeping in, slowly. Can we push it faster? Yeah, maybe, but there, Rotary has a whole incredible buffet of things that people are passionate about. This is one of them.
And does it apply, is there a way to making it apply to children, like in elementary school?
Oh yeah, and in fact, I don't elementary. Yeah, I think you could. Some of the concepts. I'm not an expert on elementary education. I know the high school, the Interact, and you have an Interact club on Bowen Island. No, Interacts is a youth program Rotary has, usually high school. In fact, in Tsawwassen, the Rotary Club of Tsawwassen was actually written up in one of the Rotary blogs. The students there took these 8 pillars, and what the teacher had them look at these 8 pillars of positive peace, and then they define where Canada was on each one of the students themselves took the 8 pillars and said, where is Canada with an open media, open information, equitable distribution of resources. They answered themselves, and then the teacher gave them various reading assignments on it. So, and then they actually presented it at a United Nations Day. The club celebrated the United Nations Day, and the Interact students from the high school presented it. So, yes, it can be taught in various ways to children. How you do it to elementary is not my forte. High school, I could understand.
Robert, you had a question?
Yeah, early on in your talk, you had a heat map of the world that rated the various countries.
Yep.
And I was wondering what obviously there was something quantifiable behind that map, and I was wondering what the parameters were, and if there was any way to see what those numbers were.
Yep, I will send the report. Whose email? Anyhow, I'll send the report. I'll send the report. It's 60 plus pages and great detail and numerous charts, but there is an executive summary. I'll send you a copy of the report, and if you could distribute, it's just a PDF, and you can look through there. There's also, they have extensive websites where they explain their research and how they do it. So all that is well documented. But I'll send the report that came out last week. And they did a separate one on peace and COVID. They admit it's early days to try to do much conclusions about COVID, but they did do some things. For instance, the relationship between international airports and COVID. And intuitively, if we think about it, where there's an international airport, there's a large cluster of COVID cases. International travel has brought it in. So not surprisingly, Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, or Calgary, our big international airports, have more cases because more people came in. So, and the peacefulness will go down. They expect less peacekeeping. Countries will not be so willing to send military for peacekeeping operations because of the economic situations in their countries. Poor countries will suffer more than Canada. You can imagine a country like Haiti suffering through COVID on top of the devastation in that country. So there's impacts on peace of this pandemic.
Chris, I will put this recording on our website as part of our blog and news area. And if those materials are not copyright, I can put them there for people to download themselves. Would that be all right?
Yeah, oh yeah, you can download them from their website. None of them, they want them. They put them out, pump them out free and on social media where you can download them, and they're more than happy to do that. That's their goal, is to get people reading their research and thinking about it and disagreeing with them and telling them why they're wrong, and they get lots of that.
Thank you.
Chris, Bourne and I had the pleasure of going to a couple of years ago now, the Vancouver Convention, downtown in Vancouver, yeah. The Peace and the Environment thing that was put on. And I was wondering, has that it was a marvelous weekend, and it was really quite inspirational
Right.
hearing the Peace Scholars talk about their journey and the work they're subsequently doing. Sorry. I was going to ask, has there been, I've sort of always looked, but I haven't seen any more of those events have happened anywhere.
Yeah, each Rotary president each year decides on if they're going to have some conferences, and if they are, like this year, the RI president decided to have a series of United Nations days. They only held one, and then COVID, the world stopped, and they were all canceled. This was the 75th anniversary of the signing of the UN Charter, so they thought it was, and Rotary has an ongoing partnership. We're observer status. We have a voluntary office. Some New York Rotarians, through volunteer or appointed Rotary observers. Mostly our connection for the UN is through the World Health Organization or our polio eradication. So this year it was these conferences, and they were going to have various themes at various United Nations locations, but they were canceled. I haven't heard if the president next year, I think he's probably just hoping that he can even visit out of his own country. He's in Hamburg, Germany.
Right. Well, I hope they keep going with it, because it was really a fantastic. And the other question I had was, you've had history within the Rotary organization on various, correct me if I'm wrong, various polio, what's the word, committees, or can you give us a quick snapshot of where things are at right now?
Well, we probably, the good news is what we learned from polio is being used for COVID, particularly in some of the African countries, Asian countries, even in Canada and the United States. One of the things that one of the ways they trace polio is environmental. They dip up sewage. The polio virus passes through your body. And they were actually doing some of that in the United States and in Canada, looking at sewage and seeing if they can find COVID in the sewage. And that's one of the things that they learned from polio. They can trace the live polio virus in sewage. So, and the network of labs that were built, and some of them were funded by Rotary in Africa, Asia, to track and do the analysis. The polio stool samples, when they're looking for polio cases, are now being used for COVID. The downside is the vaccine programs, a lot of them were canceled because of the fear. The countries were locked down, getting the vaccine across borders. So we expect to lose some ground. The good news is Nigeria was officially declared today polio-free after no cases for 3 years by the WHO, which leaves only Afghanistan and Pakistan. And our topic tonight, is very directly, the reason it's there is terrorism. Unpeaceful countries, particularly in the tribal areas of Pakistan and parts of Afghanistan that are no-go zones for most people other than the Taliban or the tribal groups. There's still polio there coming in. I was in Karachi, Pakistan 2 years ago, and we went out to some of the roadblocks around Karachi. Karachi's I think about 25 million people. There's military checkpoints where every bus, and it was incredible. There was never less than 7 or 8 buses, big buses lined up as people coming in. There's 1,000 refugees or 1,000 people move to Karachi every day. And the military stops these buses and goes through them, checks with these. And Rotary funds polio vax. These aren't volunteers, these are paid vaccinators. And they literally walk through these buses, and any kid that looks under 5 years old, they vaccinate. And there's a guy with a gun behind them. So none of the parents object. Imagine doing that here in Vancouver, going on with a gun and forcibly vaccinating children. We wouldn't tolerate it, but it works. It works there. So that's the type of things they do there. So it's difficult, but we will get there. I mean, the number of cases are getting so small. It's like COVID, you know, that it gets so small that the vaccine, the virus can't be transmitted. But there were some reports out even that using the oral polio vaccine to prevent COVID, that there's some similarities, and they're experimenting with the polio vaccine that we have 50, 60 years of research on, and it's not the same vaccine. It's been improved constantly over time. I don't know, that answers your question. You know, that's another night. We can talk for another hour on polio and some of the things we've done. You know, I saw in Nigeria, in Kano, they give the vaccinators, and the Gates Foundation funded it, cell phones with an app on it. And instead of checking off on a ship, they click an app that gives them a GPS location, how many children are vaccinated, so they get a map at the end of the day, a printed map of where, so they can figure out where the children were missed, rather than a clipboard that used to with check marks on it, and then somebody had to tally all these up and look at where there were missing children. These maps with the simple thing of an app, and they just click every time a child is vaccinated. You know, really some real neat technology they're looking at there. And one of the things they give the vaccinators a couple of hours of free airtime on the phone. So sort of a bonus. If you use the phone, you get 2 hours or 3 hours of airtime to phone your family.
Right. Huh. Oh, maybe I should have done that with my teenage kids. Well, that's just marvelous. Chris, is there any more questions for Chris? Probably not now. So Chris,
Chris, can I just make sort of two quick comments? One of which is, the idea that of getting through to people with cell phones and as has been done, it's going to have to happen here as well. They're already talking about COVID tracking apps, but I think this is something that where Rotary can really get involved in the tracking of potential COVID people who have been infected by COVID. That's the first thing. The second thing is that to provide some kind of system whereby, just as we dealt with polio, that we provide, systems, support systems, whatever. Instead of calling it polio, we're now looking after COVID. I'm old enough to remember the days when polio was a big deal in Canada in the early 1950s. And we defeated it, more or less. Well, we defeated it with the Salk vaccine. But we're back where we started from now with COVID. Yeah. And I think that this is an area where where Rotary can, if it could, and I'm just sort of putting this out as a proposition, could take on a major role, just simply saying, okay, we're going to deal with COVID, again, under the same sort of circumstances as we dealt with polio. Yeah, we're going to go out into rural communities. We're going to do whatever has to be done. We're going to work with the local health authorities, etc. And I think that this is something that Rotary could really get itself ground into. I haven't seen any other service organizations saying, okay, guys, we've really got to, this is not something that you just leave to government. This is something that has to be done by people.
Well, the polio network, the system that was built for polio is actually being used for yellow fever, dengue, and a number of other things, we call it
Yeah.
polio plus, and the plus is sometimes when the children are there for the polio vaccine, they take advantage of sometimes vitamins where there's a vitamin deficiency to give the children vitamins and other vaccines, measles vaccine. So adding COVID, assuming there is a vaccine, that's certainly potential. The cost of the vaccine, if it's injectable, we can do polio because we're still using an oral vaccine. If the COVID vaccine is injectable,
I'll take you one step.
Yeah.
I'll take you one step further, if I may. I mean, yes, all of the. Well, I won't say all of the other endemic diseases like polio. Well, even smallpox. I was inoculated against smallpox, but I doubt if you've been, etc. But I think that we need to ask the question. We have basically gone through a full cycle, like almost 100-year cycle, where we have to do something seriously about this. And yeah, there's all kinds of governmental processes, but to be honest, Rotary was probably the most effective system going because it is non-governmental, because it is supported at the grassroots. Just as an aside to everybody here on Bowen, if I may, I sent Catherine, I don't know if you saw my email to you, but the idea that maybe here on Bowen, Bowen Rotary should be buying up a whole bunch of face masks, sticking a Rotary sticker on them and handing them out as people get off the ferry.
I like that idea.
Okay, no, I can't see Hillary right now, but our new president should be thinking about this as a project for the next fiscal year. Yeah, let's get a whole bunch of face masks with Rotary stuck on them. I think it's a good idea. And so I'm coming back to you saying, Chris, I think that, yeah, I won't say, I hate to use the word opportunity, but you get the idea that this is something where we know something about the issue. Rotary has been involved for a long time. And so unlike whoever else, I think we can do something useful. I'm sure this is not something just here in Rotary or here in BC or whatever. This is something that, Rotary can do internationally.
Yep. I'm just keeping my eye on the clock, guys. And so I may I'd like to move us on if I may. Chris, champion effort, thank you for dialing in with us tonight.
Thank you.
And thank you for continuing your history with this little club on this small rock in the Pacific. It's nice to see your face, and it's nice to have you back with us. Thank you. Thanks for what you do for Rotary, and thanks for helping us out tonight.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chris, if you need to dial off, we understand that. We're just going to get down to just some notices and some details of our normal club sort of stuff. So if you need to dial out, we'll see you soon enough.
I will do that. Thank you very much, and good luck. And I will send you those reports tonight.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you
bye
very
now.
much.
Cheers.
Ciao. Bye-bye. Guys, thank you for hanging in there. We need a couple of things. Catherine, did you get some feedback from the others to whether we wanted to do, oh, she's disappeared on me.
She's going to get it.
Oh, thank you. Catherine, you're muted, by the way. Could you let us know if people wanted to catch up next week somewhere, or?
I got 4 people yes, and 2 people no.
Okay, that's all. Okay. So, and was that for a public thing, or is that specifically at my place, or just anywhere?
Just to get together, yeah.
Okay. So we'll need to.
Sorry, 3 people no, 4 people yes.
Okay, Catherine, does that include Mariana and myself?
You haven't gotten back to me.
Okay.
I have just now. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I
So,
sent you one just before the meeting.
Okay.
okay.
If it's
Uh,
outside, yes, like Richard won't come at all.
Yeah, I'm a yes too. It did. I don't know if anyone. Let's just make out of the people that are here right now. I know Hillary is a yes. Is anyone? Has everyone put their hand up if they're a yes for next week? And so there you go, Catherine. So no Robert and no Lynn. And what did you do? But one of you a yes or a no? You're a yes. Well done. And Andrew, you're a yes, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I haven't seen Allard for a bit, and Steve was here last week, but not this week. I don't know if you heard from those guys, Catherine.
No.
All right. So how about we just do it ananyway, and then
At your place?
if I think we're okay to have it here, and there's enough room here anyway for an event, so the people can still spread out and do their thing. So yeah.
Damien, Richard found an article written by one of the top ophthalmologists in the States.
Uh-huh.
And they were really huge on no indoor stuff right now.
Mm-hmm.
That being water droplets and stuff like that, it will dissipate outside.
Yeah.
It won't inside. And they were saying more than 10 to 20 minutes inside near someone who was infected, you will get it for sure. Like that was I just summarized about 2 full pages of stuff.
Okay.
So Richard's just like not going anywhere probably for the next 2 years.
Can I have a copy of that, Lynn?
Yes, I'll try and forward that on.
So how about this? We've very successfully have had many outside events at our place in our front garden, and there's no reason why we can't do it again. And so we can easily do it outside, Lynn, and
Or we could wait a month.
or we can wait a month. Like if people feel, I'm quite open. Like if people feel that they would like to just wait a little bit longer, then there's no reason why we can't.
May I make 2 suggestions, please? One of which is, yes, let's do it. Second of all is to have basically hand washing stations. I'm going back to the Middle Ages, where you had a large bowl with vinegar in it. You stuck your hands in it and washed your hands and face, and that actually got rid of the Black Plague or whatever. The second thing is that, obviously social distancing is important. But I think
masks. Lots of masks.
Masks.
Why don't we just have a Zoom meeting again?
Well, no, but Catherine,
we can do that too.
How can you have a barbecue on a Zoom meeting?
Oh, I didn't know about food.
Well, that's the point. I mean, I think it can be done. I think it can all be done. I mean, there are, basically there are places in the village like Neil and so on. I've already figured out, you can serve food, except you just have to space it out.
Okay, I tell you what, just so we don't go around in circles too long. Catherine, how about you and I and Hillary have a ultra important VIP executive meeting? And then we'll sort of discuss a couple of real possibilities, and then we'll let everyone know. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, and it may well happen next week, and it may well not, and if it doesn't, that's okay.
Please, I'd like to say, I think, I hate to say this, but I think it's important that we all do at least see each other physically rather than over the video. Even if we have to look at each other from 2 meters apart.
Yeah, okay, no problem. I mean, I sort of feel similarly, but I'm just trying to gauge the whole scene as well.
Yeah, understood.
What else have I got written down here? I talked to Hillary, Catherine. Was there any, just before I go on, is there any notices from anybody else, or any comments or feedback from anyone else?
Greetings, folks.
Pardon?
I still got empty spaces on the recycling depot thing.
Okay. All right. What do you got left?
Cynthia, did you manage to find out your schedule?
Okay, two
Adam,
things.
hang on a
First
sec.
of all, as Jungle Telegraph may have told you, we've sold our house.
Oh.
We're not moving off the island until early September.
Wow.
So, but I still don't know what our schedule looks like through July and August. But yes, Ross, I'll certainly sort of fill in the holes where if you need a hole filled, I can do it.
Adam, this is a good time to bring this up, but I'm not sure you realise that we got together, the executive got together last week. We put in a new thing where you have to pay a full year in advance. So can you make sure before, since you sold your house, I want to make sure I get my full year's fees out of you before the.
Right on.
Well,
He's
let's be
having
quite
technical
honest about
difficulties.
this. I've already paid my half year in advance to Allard, and if he's withholding that from you, I think that's between you.
That's
and
why he's not here.
He's done a runner with your fees, mate.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Ross, what were the dates for the,
We have July 7th, July the 8th, July the 14th, and July the 15th. I need people in the afternoon on July the 8th, and I need people in the morning on July the 15th.
okay, because I have a bit of a dilemma. The Nook is going to open July 3rd, but we're open starting tomorrow for donations. And people can bring stuff, I guess, in the afternoon for the next 2 weeks, and then they'll actually open July 3rd. July 3rd is actually my shift day that I usually work. And Richard's really adamant that I am not going to be going. So it's like, what safety stuff is set up in place for working in the recycling depot, knowing that I'm not going to go in the Nook?
Yeah.
Won't be any better.
I'm not sure if it's going to suit your fancy.
No.
Gloves,
Yeah.
mask,
Yeah.
lots of heavy work for 3 hours straight. I wasn't planning on scheduling you, Lynn, but nothing against you working at the recycling depot.
Ross, two quick questions. What days of the week are the 7th and 8th? I can look them up, but I don't have them.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay, and the following week, same thing again?
Yeah.
Okay. Lynn,
Yes.
I will personally, if I'm necessary, I will make you a COVID, what I would call a splatter shield. There's a lady who I've seen around the cove who has a bicycle helmet with a large plastic bucket stuck on the top. And
Okay. No, it's gotta
it
go.
probably works very well.
He's the one that is really actually just like deathly afraid that with his lungs and all the rest of it, that he's going to get it and die. So he's not in the room right now.
But
That's why I can
Robert,
do that.
for you, I have a better idea. Why don't you get a scuba? Why don't we get some scuba equipment? You could go into sorting bottles wearing scuba.
It's going to be really hard to eat barbecue breathing scuba.
No, but you can sort bottles wearing scuba.
Oh, I see.
Folks,
Can it be sorted outside, Ross?
They've got a system in place, Lynn. I'll find out some more information and get it to you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
if there's any, unless there's any other moments, I think given the inspiration from Lynn, I think we should actually do a happy sad tonight, and I think we'll kick off with you, Roscoe.
Oh, happy sad, yeah. Sad, it was raining last week. I was bored. I was housebound. I had my own projects going. Happy sad, happy. I'm working at Robert's place this week and giving him a nice new Jura deck. That's it.
Nice one. Cynthia?
I'm just trying to message you, Ross, that I'll do the 8th in the afternoon.
Oh,
Okay.
perfect. Thank you, Cynthia.
Okay.
I just got that.
So there's the happy. Woo.
Okay, perfect.
God. I'm just, I'm glad that the weather is improving because I'm so sick of this rain. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
But the world on the other side is actually as busy as it was pre-COVID. I swear to God, the traffic is just as bad as before.
Yeah.
and the hospital is getting back to normal. So it's like, I think we're all in this curve back up to normal, and then we expect at the hospital that everything at October is going to go down and be quiet again because it's going to hit us. So enjoy the time while you can outside.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, that's really bleak, but I'm just happy it's nice out. It's finally.
Andrew?
Happy as I'm good. Glad to see Vaughn's back.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sad that we haven't been able to get together in person for quite a while.
Yeah.
Looking forward to that opportunity.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Lynn? Oh, sorry, I missed Bourne. My apologies. Hi, Bourne.
It's all right. I've been missing me too. Yeah, well, I'm actually recovering now. I'm starting to feel positive. There was a long time there where I was not sure what was going on, and but the last 4 or 5 days I've been working in the garden and doing walking and feeling like
Wow.
I can do it. You know, I don't have to be chauffeured anymore. Officially yesterday, I was 6 weeks after the operation, which they say you can drive again. So
That's great.
into it.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy with that. I had a lovely thing happen today. I went for a walk from, I call it the Catholic Church walk, where I go down and I just go to the bridge that goes across the stream there. And I do this and I go feed the fish. I'm a fisherman. I love to fly fish. So I watched them jump up. But there was a young man there. When I say young man, I described him to Anne as tween, somewhere between 11 and 13, I think, somewhere in that area. And he was fishing. And so we had a nice conversation, a lovely conversation. And just lifted my heart to, he freely talked to me, and that's part of the problem of not seeing you guys in person. There is a social aspect that I really miss right now. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, here.
Yeah.
Big hug to all of you guys.
Yep. Right on, Lynn.
That was my happy thought. Thank you, Bon. So glad to hear you're on the mend and out there walking. That's just like fantastic. Yeah, it's like good job. The happy was knowing Bon is getting better. His youngest son and my youngest son came home just to make sure he was okay. So some positive out of it all, Bon.
Yeah.
At home for 2 weeks, so thank you. Bad reason, but thank you.
Yeah.
And we still haven't seen 2 of our sons, so that's my sad thought. And Matt is heading up north to be in Atland, below Atland, doing a gold, copper, whatever, not recovery, exploration, I guess, sampling. So he'll be gone for the next 4 months. So that's like the pits. So there's my sad thought. And my other one, the happy thought is, please think about someone you haven't talked to for a long time and give them a call.
Yeah. No problem.
I forgot to say a sad thing. I'm sad. I'm losing a neighborhood Rotarian, but thankfully it's not until September.
Robert?
I had the wonderful experience, or maybe the beginning of this is my sad and the end of it is my happy. I watched Roscoe and his partner Larry tear apart my old deck, and I was appalled at the lack of quality of the workmanship that went into the previous deck construction that was there, the amount of rot there was back into the house that these guys had to fix. What I am impressed about is the very high quality workmanship that these 2 artisans have brought to my house and the security of my family. And maybe there's something There's something about the old Rotary. Do you remember that Rotary is supposed to stand for business? You're supposed to do business with Rotarians. Boy, is this a wonderful experience for me to see what they've done to my house. Thanks, Ross.
Thank you, Robert.
Nice.
And thank you, Rotary. And thank
Yeah,
you
right on.
all.
Right on. Adam.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Bon. Yeah, I've got all kinds of sort of sads because leaving here is a big deal for me. You know, we've been here 25 years, but for a number of reasons, we have to go to North Van. That's where our daughter lives. We need to be closer to her, et cetera, et cetera. So on the other hand, the happy side is I don't see this as, shall we say, like going to Tanzania or wherever. You know, we'll only be a ferry ride away and back and forth. And indeed, I do hope to participate in various Bowen Rotary events. Maybe, just maybe, there will be a Bowfest. Who knows?
Yeah.
Someday.
But, you know, that's something we've got to, that's all sorts of things that we have to work out. And so as far as I'm concerned, Bowen Rotary is still very much active for me, and that's a good thing. And yeah, the only downside is I just hate the idea of moving house.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. What about you?
So know that the Nook is starting open tomorrow for donations for that movie screen and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, right. What about you,
Like I
Catherine?
said, just you wait.
I'm
Just you
happy
wait.
you sold your house,
I'm
Adam.
going to be bringing, well, we've already taken all kinds of stuff, but there's lots more.
Catherine, did you have a happy sad?
You're on mute.
Okay. My happy today is that I went into the supermarket, to the general store today with Anna, my daughter, and she was wearing goggles, swimming goggles on her face and a life jacket because even COVID can't stop the grade 12 spy versus spy competition, and of which she's playing. So I thought that was fun, and I was actually happy that they're still persevering. The kids are persevering with spy versus spy, even though they're not at school every day, and the school year is just about over and all that sort of stuff. But she still went into the supermarket with her goggles on and a life jacket on, and which I thought was quite hilarious, and I was pleased to see that she made the effort to do it. Yeah, that's about it for me. Any last minute? Oh, hang on, Cynthia.
Happy
Father's Day for yes. Happy Father's Day, everybody.
Okay. Okay. Well, just to repeat something, I've sent or I've talked to Catherine, or left a message, whatever. The idea that Rotary, Bowen Rotary, might get involved in distributing COVID masks with a Rotary sign on them, of course, to basically hand out to whoever needs them. A little bit like the good person who we don't know, who sent out masks in our mailboxes. I think that was a brilliant idea, and I think this is something that we should be pursuing if it can be arranged.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Let's talk about it at the next meeting, guys. It's touching 9 o'clock here, so we should call it a day. Thank you very much for coming tonight, Lynn. Thank you for your beautiful words. And Robert, as always, thank you for being a champion and steering the bus on our Zoom meeting and our recordings. I will talk to you all again next week. We'll send out a note in between the next few days after our super VIP important executive meeting with Catherine.
It's good.
All right, everybody.
Everybody,
Thank you.
see
Have a
ya.
great
Good night.
night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for
Good night,
Take
good night,
care,
everybody.
Bye bye.